I've got a blanket draped over my chair and I've run over it. Good evening, everybody. Okay, we're good. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. I feel like that's important to get out of the way. It's January 6th, 2021, which is pretty cool. It was a pretty crummy day here in southern Ontario, but me and the lady of the house, we got our booster shots. We've been jabbed. Feeling good. Feeling relatively normal and stable. Well, about as stable as normal as I usually do. Yes, happy Marco Rossi Day to all of you as well. His NHL debut. I've actually got it going off to the side here, and I will be paying very little attention to it. I'll probably be watching it when his video is available online. Well, I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all staying healthy. I have lots and lots of friends currently on the COVID list, which is pretty crazy to me. But I hope that whether you are sick or not, this show can be a nice little getaway from it all. Thank you very much for joining me. It's wonderful to be here. This is now, I believe, in terms of calendar years, this is the 5th calendar year I've done this show. That's scary to think about. That's very, very weird, but I love doing it. I'm happy to provide insights and data, and I'm happy to have you all here. For any podcast listeners, I will also list all the players that I've tracked this week, or I guess it's been the last 3 weeks because I was off for the holidays, and then we did the World Juniors thing, which was kind of fun. And the whole time I've been tracking. So, Alexander Suzdalev, Alexander Perevalov, Connor Geeky, Matthew Savoy, Shane Wright, Philip Meshar, Gavin Hayes, Isaac Howard, Kenta Isogai, Tristan Luneau, Simon Nemish, Luca D'Amato, Matthew Poitras, Owen Beck, Eric Galiev. There's a lot of them this week. It's the last few weeks. It's been busy. Elias Salamonson, Liam Ugren, Vadim Fatakov, Ludwig Jansen, Kevin Korchinski, Matthias Sapovaliv, Shapovaliv, Logan Cooley, Devin Kaplan, Seamus Casey, Isaiah George, Adam Sikora. I'm waiting for the scroll to keep going. Adam Ingram, and I believe that's it. Yes, that is it. Okay. Let's jump right into the questions because there's already a lot of them. And usually after January is when despondent NHL fans start popping up in these to ask draft-related questions, and it starts to ramp up a little. So let's get into it right off the bat strong here in January. Hello, Alexis. How are you? Have you had a chance to watch the New Jersey Devils at all this season? Honestly, not much. I watched one of their games really early in the year. But I just don't really have the time to watch much NHL hockey, to be honest. So I haven't had a chance. At what point do you take a prospect seriously when you don't really like how he looks when you watch him, but he has tons of points? Asking for Jordan Dumay. Oh, that's a great question. So, like, I think a big thing for me, and again, I think this varies from person to person. Like, I think it's perfectly reasonable to have the argument, well, they're scoring points somehow, and that has value. Like, they're somehow putting the puck in the net and other people are not. And in my view, I think there's a lot more to it. When I look at Jordan Dumay, I see a shifty, no-nonsense offensive player. He's not the quickest guy. He's not the most skilled guy. I like how let's zoom back a bit. When I looked at Jordan Dumay early in the year, I was just as surprised as everybody else with how much he was scoring. I saw him a bit last year and wasn't super taken with him. I mean, he's playing with... I think part of the factor is he's playing with Zach Leroux. From every time I've seen him, it's been Zach Leroux and Elliot Desnoyers. And those two guys, like, I wasn't the biggest fan of Zach Leroux last year, but I take Zach Leroux on my team almost every day over Jordan Dumay based on what I've seen of both. And Elliot Desnoyers, I think legitimately, complete blind spot. The Philadelphia Flyers pulled a rabbit out of their hat on that one, and I think that's pretty clear that he has outperformed his draft slot, I think. And, he's a tremendous junior level player. And I think when you have... If we're talking about leagues like the Quebec Major Junior League, where not a lot of defensemen come out of that league. Like, if you go through the NHL, I don't know how many played in the QMJHL for their junior time, but I don't think it's very many relative to the OHL and the WHL. And the proportion of forwards that make it out of that league are significantly higher. And even then, I don't think it's as high when we look back on it. And with Dumay, and I could be wrong on that, but that's basically just over the years how I've picked up on things. With Dumay, what I like about him, you have to start with how he's generating his points, right? Like, if he's got a wide open net and he's standing at the side of the net, he's scoring his goals, right? He's not going to whiff on that opportunity, like you shouldn't. But I do like that there's a bit of shiftiness to him. He's kind of deceptive with his body and can fake out defenders and make them bite early and make a play from there. But I don't think that that's something that really translates unless you've got real high-end skill and quickness, which I don't really see out of Dumay. So, at least not right now. And maybe you could learn that, for sure. Like, down the road, you give him a few years to learn some stuff, sure. Like, I'm sure he can improve. But I just, like, considering his production is up here, I don't buy it. And I don't see him as the guy that's driving the line on that line, right? Like, Matthew Semenoff is a similar case in the WHL, where he scored a ton of points. And when guys like Logan Stankoven and Josh Pilar were removed, his scoring plummeted. So when I look at Jordan Dumay, I see a player where he doesn't really seem to be a guy who's driving that line, but he knows how to finish. And again, it just goes back to this whole thing. Like, if we're looking at the draft, you use the draft to acquire talent that you wish you had more of all of the time, right? Like, to some people, yes, that's big, strong, powerful guys who can be mean. Sure, like, that's one thing. For me, I look at guys who are high speed, high pace, high skill puck transporters. Finishing is a bonus, but primarily what I'm looking for as valuable, moving up the ice. And with a guy like Dumay, like, especially for guys at the junior level, right? Like, I want guys at the junior level to be play drivers. And I see other guys driving the play for a guy like Dumay. And that, to me, like, that's something that's pretty apparent pretty quick. Like, it's pretty apparent pretty quick, and it's also why I track data, because I can track a couple of games. I have to do more of him, and I will soon, probably in the next week or two. So he's on my list. But I just want to see some sort of play driving out of a player, especially when they're playing with such talented line mates. And with Dumay, I see him as more of an auxiliary finisher, which is fine. But I worry about what happens past the QMJHL. I worry about what happens if he ever makes the NHL. I worry about what happens when Zach LaRue leaves the team and Elliot Desnoyers leaves the team, right? Like, that will be very interesting to see what happens. Anyway, to me, to answer your question quickly, I think that you have to see it through the lens of, like, what are they doing? What are they contributing? And like, points are one way of contributing, but there's a lot more things that need to be done to finish the job. To get the puck in the net. There's a lot of things that need to happen first, and I don't see Dumay being particularly effective at all of those things, just finishing plays that other guys are setting up. Again, not the biggest sample of the guy, but that's been my read on him, and that's why he's not ranked super high for me, or a lot of people. Like, a lot of people do not have him ranked very high relative to his production. Have you seen any of Nicholas Moldenauer? No, but he's on my list for this week. So ask me again next week, Zach. I know you'll be here. You're one of the best. Come back and ask me again next week, and I will have more on Moldenauer. What is Jordan Dumay's upside? I don't know. At the end of the year, I could pull him off my list. I just because I don't, like, same thing with Antonin Véro. I had him on my list until today, actually, and then I took another look at him last night and was on the fence about even thinking about it. Like, him versus a guy like Logan Stankoven, right? I found so many things so quickly with Logan Stankoven that I loved that I just don't see out of guys like Véro. He's skilled and he's quick, but not enough, I don't think. And in the QMJHL, which is much softer defensively in my experience. So I just question his upside in general. Like, he's either going to hit as a complementary offensive finisher, or he's probably going to be like a good AHLer. I don't know. It just spooks me is all. Where would Fantille go in 2022? For me, probably 1 or 2. 2 at worst. That answers the question. 2 at worst, probably 1. Do you think Matt Savoy has 90-point potential? No, I don't think so. I don't think he, yeah. I don't think so. Who is on Team Scouching? Oh, that's a question. So Team Scouching, if you're unfamiliar, for any of you, if you are new, Team Scouching is just a way for me to check my work. I think it's really important as a talent evaluator to do the hard part. The easy part is doing the analysis, right? The easy part is watching the tape, making your notes, getting things straightened out on your list, and kind of understanding who you'd prefer in what order. The hard part is if you work for an NHL team, you get, out of all of those names, you get 7-ish to pick, and you gotta pick one. You gotta pick one, and you gotta say no to a lot of other guys that other teams may very well draft, right? So for me, it was pretty clear right away where I'm going, okay, I need to take a look at this guy, I need to make sure that I keep a list of guys that I would have picked at the time without the benefit of hindsight and see what happens. So in chronological order, we can do that because that would be a lot of fun. Text contains 2015. So I started doing this in 2015 with my own sort of, before I was this person and before I was doing all this stuff, I just did it for fun. And I came out with Mitch Marner, Kyle Capobianco, Rasmus Anderson, Mitch Van de Sample, Kirill Kaprizov at 95, Dmitry Timashov, and Cooper Merity. I use the Toronto Maple Leafs picks because I live in the GTA and it's just the easiest thing for me to do. And Mikhail Burdan was also on that list, which is a dope-ass draft class, if you ask me. But then 2016 happens. We've got Daniel Vladar, not bad, but Austin Matthews at 1, Jonathan Dahlin, Adam Fox, Frederick Ayard, Taylor Radish, Noah Gregor, and Ty Ronning. And then 2017, we've got Not My Finest Hour, Timothy Liljegren, and then a big break, then Kyle Olson, Igor Shviryov, Nick Campoli, Ivan Chekovich, and Jacob Tortora. Not sure what happened to Jake Tortora, but he was fun for a long time. Not sure what happened there. Next is 2018. We've got, who's on here? Joe Valeno, Kalen Addison, Alan McShane, Linus Carlson, Linus Newman, Philip Kral, Liam Kirk, Jerry Turkalainen, and Carl Vasenius. And I will die on the Jerry Turkalainen hill. 2019, we're almost there. 2019 is Nicholas Robertson, Yegor Serdyuk, Mikko Kokkonen, Rhett Pitlick, Levi Altonen, Billy Constantinou. Mixed bag, I would say, at least today. And then 2020, we've got who do we have? Rodion Amirov, Daniil Gushchin, Jean-Luc Foudy, Alexander Pashin, Victor Mancini, Anton Johannesson is in there, Yegor Suchkov is in there, who I will still stand, Brady Burns with a 7th rounder, Ethan Cardwell 6th round, Anton Lukachev 7th round, but it should be Cam Berg. I'm still kicking myself about that, even though Cam Berg is still a long shot. And Dmitry Nikolaev was my goalie that year. So that's the overall list. I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, I don't know how else to answer your question, because that's literally the question you asked. Okay. Hello, Exertion. Do you have the Wild Bruins game on? Rossi and Boldy looking good so far. Got my booster shot. Congratulations on the booster. I am not really paying attention to this game right now, but I have it going. How many of 2023 would go before Shane Wright? Probably 2 or 3. Bemichkov and Bedard. But it's also too early. Like, all these questions I'm getting about 2023 recently, like, so many guys that I got excited about for 2021 have just underperformed wildly what I thought this season. So I don't know. But at least Michkov and Bedard, I think, go before Shane Wright. I've been really high on Slavkovsky. I've never done that drug. Don't do drugs. If you're high on Slavkovsky, call your doctor. What do you think his ceiling is? Oh, you mean Yuri Slavkovsky. Okay. So Yuri Slavkovsky, I think has a really high ceiling, but the likelihood that he gets there is a little bit limited. He's obviously huge, and he's, for a big guy, he's got some good skill, and he can generate some solid pace through the neutral zone. I mean, he's basically a video game character at the finished junior level, which for a guy like him, he should have no problem. When I watch him in the Liga, I'll pull up his data. Like, he's very interesting. I think he'll be an NHL player, and a good one. I don't know what NHL player he reminds me of, but what we're dealing with is a gigantic sort of modern power winger. He kind of gives me Jordan Greenway vibes a little bit, but with a bit more skill to him. Like, no matter what you do to that player, he'll find a way to make a play. And yeah, he'll find a way to make a play, and that's it. Like, it's guys are draped all over him, and he'll find a way to make something happen. You know, close quarters really isn't a problem for him. He's big, he's strong, he's already pretty built out, and I feel like there's more to go. He could get stronger. I don't see why not. He's just a kid. I think he's more of a threat as a playmaker off the boards, but he can score. He's capable of it. Again, I worry about what his actual impact at the NHL level will be, because his impact in the Liga has been a little bit mixed, I would say. Better than I thought, but mixed. He's been good, but I'd say sort of mixed. So I don't know. I think that if he has, let's say you send him back to Finland for a year, maybe two, let him go to a World Junior, you know, give him some more confidence, give him some more minutes at the Liga level, and just keep pushing him up the chain a little bit, and he just gets stronger and quicker and less. He's a bit cumbersome at times. Like, he's a bit just janky on his feet, really, you know, choppy on his feet. But I really, really like the potential of the guy, and I could see him being drafted as high as like second overall, just because of the tools that are there and that are kind of there. I thought at the World Junior, his lack of real high-end pace and skating were kind of exposed, but he's a good player. Like, he could be a really, really good NHL power forward. I'm just not sure how much of an impact he'll bring to the game. Logan Cooley in Ottawa. Sure, I would. Yeah, Logan Cooley anywhere. Sign me up. Relationship between goals against average and save percentage when scouting goalies. Oh, God. Well, the only thing I really use those for is, one, are you stopping pucks? And two, from that metric, you can derive their average workload. So, I mean, guys who save a lot of pucks and face a lot of pucks are very interesting to me. Like Dmitry Nikolaev for years was, you know, facing 40 shots. Kirill Gerasimyuk was another one, facing 40 shots a night with a 92 or 93% save percentage. You know, you don't do that without being some kind of a good goaltender, usually. I think that it's interesting to look at the relationship of goals against average and save percentage based on workload. I believe there was a study done like 10 years ago that I read where at the extreme ends, save percentage is inflated. So if you have a really, really low workload, you're going to have a higher save percentage than you should because you have that low workload and you can make those saves easier. You have less work to do. At the other end, you face so many pucks that you may let in 4, which isn't great, but you have so much practice and such a large sample of making saves that you're going to save quite a few, and you're probably making multiple saves repeatedly rather than one save and a defenseman clears a rebound or something. So yeah, I mean, it's difficult. It depends on the player, but yeah. It's, I don't spend too much time scouting goalies either. Not a ton of time. But I definitely use it to sort of look at the basics of a player's profile. Drink lots of water. I felt good day of, but the booster KO'd me next day. Yep, water's here, and I'm ready to stay hydrated, folks. Oh, the greatest fluid ever invented by the universe. How's it going, Adil? What's up? What's wrong with Salamanson? That's the $1 million question. He's not the same player that I remember from last year. Last year, I remember a confident, strong, skilled, and offensive, dangerous defenseman. And this year, I don't see anything. Like, I've spoken to him with a few people who have watched him more than I have, and they all feel the same way. He just hasn't done anything. He's passive. Offensively and defensively, he's passive. He's basically only going D to D with the puck, and that's it. He has, once in a while, you see flashes of like this creativity with the puck and stepping into the middle of the ice and all that stuff, and you see what you want to see out of him. But then it just isn't there for 95% of the game. And maybe it's his coach sort of in his ear going, you're a defenseman, play defense. But I don't know, like even when he has tons of ice to play with, he gives the puck away. Or goes D to D and doesn't play with the space he's got. You know, it's very much reminiscent kind of to me of a more extreme different, well, maybe not, but it reminds me of Daniil Chayka from 2 years ago to last year, where you saw this defenseman who could generate offense and create points and, you know, have some skill and all that stuff. And then he goes to Russia and he's just a guy. He's just sitting back, letting the opponent come to him, stick checks, soft defense, just very passive. And that's not his brand. I don't know what's going on with Salamonson personally. I mean, if a team drafts him at 20th overall, it might surprise me, but it wouldn't, like, if you think that there's something else going on or you know there's something else going on, then yeah, it makes sense. If he goes 60th overall, a team could hit a home run for all I know. But it's just, to me, a lot of the things that I liked about him last year are just not there anymore. Like, just straight up, they're not there. Maybe like for 5 seconds, but they're not there. I don't know. We'll see what happens with him. It's fascinating because sometimes this happens. I don't know. What did you make of Matthew Savoy's lack of shot attempts? What do you mean? I mean, Matthew Savoy. Oh God. I mean, okay. So after I did Matthew Savoy, I bumped him down to the later part of the top 10, more in line with what the market has on him. There's a lot of concerns, I think, with his game that I think has taken a while for me to see. And like, I have to choose my words carefully because I think a lot of people really like him. And I think that his potential is just as high as anyone in this draft. But I do not see, at least at 5-on-5, I do not see a dominant junior player. I don't. I just don't. He's not getting inside for his shots. That's for sure, 100%. He's barely shooting the puck at all. He's just not shooting the puck because he's not touching the puck a whole lot. He's passing the puck quite a bit, but he's missing a lot. He's sending passes into the slot a lot, but they're not being completed a lot. Like he's more of a perimeter playmaker, it seems, and not finding a tremendous amount of success driving pucks inside at even strength. And that's troubling. I also see this as a problem. You know, like I just started this stream talking about how important I think transporting the puck is, and Matthew Savoy is a guy who transports the puck far less often than the vast majority of offensive of forwards I track. Like he's 82nd in the data set as of right now when it comes to involving himself in carrying pucks up the ice. Right? So what and that, to me, I believe it. I look at that data and I go, well, the next 4 games I do will be way better. I look at that and go, this is a guy who struggles to separate himself from defenses. He's too easy to counter because he's not quick enough or deceptive enough or agile enough to keep them guessing. He just takes his route and a guy sticks to him the whole way because you can't give him any space. So I think teams are just countering him because they can. And I don't know, give him a few years and I think he could become one of the best players to come out of this draft. But I don't like that idea. I don't like the idea of drafting a player that has real flaws right now, but could be one of the best players in the entire draft and draft that player like second or third or fourth overall. Like, I just think that those stakes are too high, especially if you're rebuilding. I think Savoy has a ways to go to hit that ceiling, and he could do it. You know, like when he has some time and space to play with, if you mix up on your if you mess up on your assignment, he's gone. He's done. You're done. You know, he's got a great shot, and he can get the pucks into dangerous areas that you need to see out of him. But I don't see it often enough, or reliably enough, I should say, where it really makes me think that he is super, 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 super high end, right? It's just a lot of questions, that's all. And there's stuff that's been percolating in my head for a while, but then I've seen him in this last game I tracked, and I'm going, okay, yeah, I still have these concerns, and they're not getting better. Still have these as well, it's not getting better. He can't do this, can't do this, can't do this. He's having trouble with this, but he's scoring a lot on the power play, so he has talent, but just not the full package yet, and there's risk, that's all. How did Galiev go? He didn't. He did very little in that game. It was not great, Dylan. I'm sorry. I like him. He's fast and fun and can shoot and has some skill, but in the game I did, at least, against Memonte Ugri, he was a guy, a very small guy. Hey, Will, thoughts on Raul Yakupov? I think he has underrated skill. Well, I hate to be the burster of your bubble, but I do not like Raul Yakupov really much. I've tracked him once, watched other games of him, and I don't see it. I don't think there's much there. I think he's just a guy. He's scoring points, but I don't, he's a guy. Thoughts on Levi Merilainen? He's the next Patrick Waugh. I don't know. I used to play with Shane Wright. He's from my city. He's a celebrity here. Yeah, I imagine. I've been watching him forever, and he's always been outstanding at every level. Why do you think he's having a down year? Okay, another one where I got to choose my words carefully here. When I did the Shane Wright game this week, I think he's getting better. I think a big thing that was slow for him, and I think is getting better but not good enough, is his he just didn't seem to have his feet under him. He looked like a guy who hadn't played hockey in a year and a half or whatever. He was slower than I thought he would be, less skilled, way more passive defensively than I expected. But I mean, there are things that he does really, really, really well, and he's number one on my list. And he will be probably until the end of the year, especially with how his season's been going in my mind. Like this season, or not this season, but today or this week, that's weird. This week I put him and Lambert on a list. Oh, Kirill Kaprizov to the room. Yikes. What was I saying? I got too distracted by Kirill Kaprizov. With Shane Wright, I think he's getting better. His skill level is very, very practical, and his brain is really high end. I just think that the pace of his game is really limiting his offense, and it's really low. He's one of the least involved defensive involvement players that I've tracked. He needs guys to do a lot of heavy lifting for him. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's something that should be known. I look at him and go, look, he's a really good puck transporter as it is. He's top 10 sending pucks into the middle of the ice, top 20 at completing them. That's awesome. He's a really, really smart manager of the puck. He maintains control on offensive possessions super duper well. I don't know how much, again, he's like Slafkovsky, where I'm not sure how much of an actual impact he'll have in the NHL, but if it's like Montreal taking him, next fall, if they're not pasting Shane Wright to Cole Caulfield and just building chemistry between those two guys, then what are you doing here? Like, that would make sense to me. But if it's like Arizona, and they've got him and a guy like Dylan Guenther, who has, I think, similar concerns, not so sure that would be the best move for like real NHL projectability. Like, he needs sort of higher octane, higher speed offensive guys to play with. Like San Jose would make a ton of sense. right? Like him with William Eklund or Daniil Gushchin or Brandon Coe, guys who have some pace to their game and some skill and can put the puck in the net and, they can play off a guy like Shane Wright. Like right now he's got Chromiak and Lucas Edmonds, I believe, sometimes Paul Ludwinski. Ludwinski's not a great finisher. And Chromiak is a good finisher and he's been scoring a ton, but I don't know. I'm not as pessimistic as I was about Shane Wright for sure, but I also will say that at the World Juniors, again, like you saw some of the limitations of his game. Obviously it was just a couple of games and you can't take away too much, but the procedural things that I like to talk about with Shane Wright, there were concerns, and I think that those concerns were apparent at the tournament. But he's still he's a fantastically talented player, who I enjoy watching, but he's not the most exciting player to watch, but he knows what to do and when. Like someone mentioned, I forget who, I forget if anyone actually did. I don't think anyone actually mentioned a player in the NHL he plays like. I mean, to me, he kind of, I just had it in my head. Oh yeah, like to me, he kind of gives me like Jonathan Toews vibes, right? Like if you take away Jonathan Toews from Patrick Kane for his entire career, is he as much of an offensive impact player? He's probably as much of a two-way impact player, but yeah, yeah. I just saw the question. Hey, Arizona has Clayton Keller. That's true. You could put him with Clayton Keller. If not Shane Wright, then who do the Yotes draft? Well, that's the thing. If you're Arizona, you draft Shane Wright, but they haven't, like Arizona hasn't really drafted anyone that I would really be comfortable playing with Shane Wright. They would need to knock it out of the park with their 2021 picks to get high speed, sort of aggressive, skilled guys to play with a guy like Shane Wright and make it make sense. That's my hunch. But again, I'm just a guy. I could be wrong. But it'll probably be Shane Wright if Arizona's picking first overall, and then you just build around him. But you got to build around him and do the right things, because I feel like if him and guys like Gunther are on the ice in the NHL together, NHL forechecks I feel like are just going to close them out really quickly and maul them. Could Cleven be a Methot? I don't think so. I don't know. I've never liked Tyler Cleven. I think that's an extremely optimistic option, and like picking the one guy that has been an Ottawa Senator that might be the guy that doesn't score a ton of points but still carries value. I don't know. Tyler Cleven is a mystery to me. I don't know. Much rather have... There it is. Is that Matt Boldy? First goal. Good boy. I don't know. I don't know. I struggle to see Tyler Cleven as a guy that gets put in an NHL lineup other than like him being big and mean and nasty and physical and hitting guys hard. Every time I've seen him, I just haven't been super impressed. Like you hate to use the name Ben Harper, but like I remember watching Ben Harper playing, and he was big and mean and nasty and not the worst skater I've ever seen. But when the puck hit his stick, it's like, oh, okay. And he's still got lots and lots of NHL games. I think he's still in the NHL with Nashville, which is crazy to me, because his results have been so bad. But anyway, I don't know. I don't really see much in Tyler Cleven, and I never have. Ahoy, Etienne, what's up? What would you say would be the top? What would you say would be the NHL comparables for your top 3D? Seaman Nemish, Seamus Casey, and David Jiricek. So Seamus Casey's kind of like a smaller Devin Taves to me a little bit. That's kind of the vibe I get. Jiricek reminds me of like Sergachev a little bit. And Nemish, this is tricky because I don't know who Nemish reminds me of. I don't know. I'm not as high on Nemish as the other two. And it always troubles me when I can't really pick out I can't even really identify the playing style of Seaman Nemish. He's one of the least active defensive players on defense I've tracked all year, like by a long shot. It's pretty crazy. And one of the most offensively involved ones in rushes in ways that I don't think really work that well. Or work that well at the NHL level. But he's a decent passer, not a great one, but a decent one. I don't know. Nemish is a tough one, so I'll just plead the fifth and say Casey's kind of like a smaller Devin Taves a little bit, and Jiricek Maybe a Sergachev type of guy. Matt Nye's Olympian. Are you convinced he's prime Eric Lindros? No. No, I'm not. Do you still have faith that Dahlin can be an elite defenseman, or do you think that's out of the range now? I think he can be an elite defenseman. What is he, 20? He'd be 22 now? He was drafted in 28. He's born in 2000. He's turning 21 this year, isn't he? Rasmus Dahlin. Yeah, he's 21. He's going to be turning 22. Yeah, he's not done. He's not done. 2022, not a 2022 draft question, but thoughts on Andrei Kuzmenko, 25-year-old KHLer gaining NHL interest. Well, you are an Ottawa Senators fan, and you saw that tweet that I believe it was Kuzmenko's agent said was false. But if it's true, Andrei Kuzmenko is one of the very few KHL players that I would pick out of the KHL and feel confident they could play NHL minutes. Kuzmenko's one of them. I've been a fan of him since 2018. Denis Zernov is another one I've liked. Who else? Vladislav Alexander Koklachev. He's one, but Kuzmenko I think is one of the best that hasn't been drafted in the KHL. So I mean, if I'm an NHL team, I'm calling him every year. You know, I'm calling him saying, look, it's a 1-year contract now at this point. Like, we'll pay you the maximum amount for 1 year. If you like it, we'll pay you what you're worth. It'll be more than what you'll get in St. Petersburg. If you don't like it, you can go home. I don't care. But we want you playing, and we think you're a top 6 NHL player because I think he's that good. He's very, 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 very talented. So I would give him a shot and see what happens. Do you think Matvei Bemichkov could fall in 2023 due to his contract in Russia? He shouldn't. Like, again, I think I've answered this question like 4 straight streams. People said the same thing about Vasily Podkolzin. I don't think they care anymore. You draft him, maybe he goes over to the KHL for 2 years and shoots the lights out. Maybe the team that drafts him doesn't need to be competitive in the next 2 or 3 years, and they want to take a longer road, right? Like, if it's the Arizona Coyotes of the first overall pick after drafting Shane Wright this year, and they don't get Matvei Bemichkov until Shane Wright is 22, you got to find a way to make it work some way else, and then when you get Michkov and add him to that group at the end of the day on that entry-level contract, then you look like a genius. So it's something where I think you have to plan for it, but if you don't draft Matvei Bemichkov, especially if you're a straight-up rebuilding team, and you can afford to be patient, then I think you're nuts. I mean, I have a little bit of concerns about his game just in some areas, but he's still tremendously talented. And I mean, I don't know when was the last time a KHL contract really pushed a guy down the board, right? Shakir Mukhamadullin signed an entry-level contract in the middle of a contract year in the KHL. You can make things happen in Russia too if you have the means. So I don't know. Wouldn't be the end of the world if he did slip. It'd be crazy if he slipped a little bit, but I don't know. Give him some time if he wants it. Play his game and I don't know. I'm not super concerned. Why hasn't Leafs media begun singing Topi Niemela's praises yet? Because he's from Finland. He's from Finland and he plays defense. I think it's just I don't know. I feel like it's that simple. Like it's harder to frame a piece around some European defenseman that was a 3rd round pick and like build hype for him. I mean, maybe they go over there and interview him in Finland. Maybe they do that and they're like, oh, this is the next wunderkind on defense for the Leafs. But I don't know. I get the feeling that if he were North American, Leaf fans or Leaf media, I suppose, would be going nuts ready for this guy to play. But also, I mean, usually for me, I will not get too excited about a player until they're in the NHL. I will get encouraged and hopeful, and like, I know the guys that I believe in. With Topi Niemela, I've always believed in him, and I think he's going to be a good NHL player. But in terms of like the type of production he's putting up and what he probably will do in the NHL, I think he'll be a good NHL defenseman for sure, like a good, skilled, offensive NHL defenseman. But translating to North America is a different game, and we'll see what happens. I really like him, but I think the reason why the Leaf media is not really talking that much about him is because he's a weird case study that's in Finland all the time and unproven in North America, and the Leaf team is good. Why would you bother talking about Leaf prospects when the Toronto Maple Leafs themselves are so good? Like, why would you do that? Like, prospect people can freak out about him all they want, and fans can hype him up all they want, but the media is too busy covering the wagon of hockey that is the Toronto Maple Leafs and what they're capable of when they play well. And when they don't play so well, they also cover what they're capable of. Thoughts on Jj Paterka? Super underrated. I don't know about underrated, but he's very good. I've liked him more, and his numbers deeper than points have been better than Jack Quinn this year. I really like Jj Paterka. I think he's going to be a good play driver in the NHL. You know, I think there's offensive upside, but I think that more often than not, I'll see him as more of a 200-foot, intense physical guy with some offensive output. I really like Paterka. I don't know if he's underrated anymore because more and more people like him. I mean, I had him in my first round, so I've always been a fan. Who are your top 5 centers for the draft? Red Wings fan asking. Also, who are you most disappointed you won't get to watch at the World Juniors? Well, I mean, I saw everyone at the World Juniors, right? Like, every team played. But I am disappointed that I don't get to see more of the Slovakian team in general. I don't think they ever really found their footing, I don't think. But I wanted to see more of them. Guys like Slavkovsky and Shakura and Dvorsky and all those guys. But I don't know, like, I think with what I saw what I expected to see out of a lot of the guys I wanted to look at in the World Juniors, but it is unfortunate. I just wanted to see what was going to happen, that's all. And the top 5 centers in the draft, well, Shane Wright's 1, Lambert 2, Goolie 3, Savoy 4. I like Savoy on the wing. I don't think I've seen Nazar playing much at center. I haven't seen Gleb playing at center. Okay, so we'll say that. Wright, Goolie, Savoy, if he's at center, Ushl and Kulik. Those are kind of my guys right now. Mashar is really close there. I'd say Mashar is like 5B if I can cheat and put an extra name in there. Those guys are really, really close together, and he's played at the wing quite a bit this year. How do you compensate for draft eligibles playing on extremely talented lines? Wisdom, Wright, and Chromiak. Well, it's why I track data, my friend. Like, I track the data because I see the individual's impact on the game, right? Like, I want to see guys who are hitting their targets with their passing. I want to see guys who are creating in the offensive zone, the guys who are creating the shot assists for their line mates. I want to see the guys who can carry the puck up the ice themselves. It's just an individual case study thing, and it's why I track data. It's hard to say because there's no one way to do it. There's no like magic formula to say, well, the player plays with these guys, therefore this. It's like, how do they do what they do, and what do they contribute to that line, right? Like that's what I'm interested in, and it's more about their playing style. With Wisdom, he was the wrecking ball. He was a physical guy. I liked the skill that he had, but he was an intense physical player that really applied a lot of really good pressure and turned over a lot of pucks for his team. Shane Wright, I mean, he's the one that I think is transporting that puck up the ice a lot and pushing the play up the ice really, really intensely for his team. Not super quickly, but efficiently. And Chromiak is a great finisher, but he's also improved his overall transition game from what I've seen. But it depends on the player, and it depends on... But the data tells a lot of the story in my experience. How does the under-20 league in Finland compare to the USHL? I don't like it as much. I don't know. The bad teams in the U20 league in Finland are really bad. They're really, really, really bad. And you have to be really careful looking at under-20 level league, under-20 Finnish league data because they split in half halfway through the year. So what happens is they play half the season all together. Top division plays all together. And then they split in half. The top division goes off, or the top half goes and plays basically a playoff round robin thing that goes for the rest of the season. The bottom half play against the top half of the second division under 20 leagues, or the best teams out of that league at that time. So you got some guys on teams that might finish like 9th and just barely miss that cutoff, and they play teams that are the second division, teams that are battling to get into that top division, and they get blown out like 12-0 by teams like that. Like the divide is huge. It's like Russia basically, because they combine multiple levels together at a certain point in the league. The USHL doesn't do that. I trust the USHL a lot more than the Finnish Junior League, and the guys that I've looked at in the Finnish Junior League over the years that I get really excited about, I tend to overvalue, because again, like a part of the job is what happens when this player is in the next level. What happens when the player is outside there and in this other situation. And you get a lot of perks playing in junior hockey in Europe, especially in a place like Finland where the level of competition is a little lower. So I always look for guys that are playing pro hockey in Finland more than anything if I'm looking at Finnish players, for example. Or at least I weigh that much more heavily. Really liking Marco Casper, feeling like he'd be a good fit for the Wings. Yzerman clearly values Rugala's program for development. How much do you think that factors in for GMs? Oh, I think it matters. People, like, on one hand, it's obviously something that can kind of be made fun of now. It's like a meme where everybody in hockey, it's like passing the same salt shakers to the same people over and over again, right? There's just churn. Everybody talks to people they know. Everybody, everybody just talks to whoever they know, and they just hire whoever they know and all that stuff. But I mean, in any business, in any world that you're in, right? Whether it's hockey or, I don't know, the music world or chicken farming or something, to get really, you'll do business with people that usually, more often than those that you don't. So yeah, I think it matters. And I think Casper would be a fine pick for the Red Wings. It depends on where you're picking him. I mean, if he goes 10th overall, I would see why, but I wouldn't do it. But I think as a rock solid mid to late first round pick, like absolutely, I would give Casper a pick. Like, he's not maybe a top pair guy, not top pair, but like top line sort of offensive guy. But I could see him being a responsible defensive presence that can transition the puck up the ice and sort of chip in, but maybe not produce a ton of points, just be a sort of rock solid hockey player, which is fine. But just maybe not the biggest ceiling for him. What do you think Tristan Luneau projects into the NHL if he makes it? He'll get minutes in the NHL no matter what. I think he's that type of player. Like, he's very cautious, very sort of safe, sits back, really focuses on puck retrievals and simple one-touch passes to start breakouts and everything. But he doesn't, like, I did a game of him this week, and I just sat back and going, I still don't see any argument for why this guy should go in the first round. He's just a guy. He's capable. He's a good defensive player, I would say, in the QMJHL. Like, he's not bad. He shoots the puck a lot for a guy that I don't think has much offensive upside. I don't know. I have doubts. But as a defensive first player, that if he can learn to manage the puck a little bit better offensively, I think he could be a good defense first guy that you could pair with maybe a more aggressive offensive player that might be able to move pucks up the ice and create a little bit for him. But I think that he's more of a second round guy to me. Like, if he's the second or third guy you add, I think you're good. That's not a bad thing to do. But if you pick him first, I think you're just aiming really, really low. I just don't think that there's a huge ceiling with him. You'll probably get a perfectly capable defensive player. Whether he plays 15, 20 minutes a night, I don't know. That's up to the coaches. But I get the feeling that he'll be a perfectly adequate defensive NHL defenseman. More likely than anything. Could there be offensive explosions to come? Sure, I guess, maybe, but I'm not holding my breath. Thoughts on Brady Stonehouse? I don't have any, but I'll put him on the list to look at later. I appreciate the names, always. I do look at them. Most of them I'm not a huge fan of. I'm half kidding, but I do look at them all. Is happy wife, happy life a true statement? Man, no. No. It's also like rooted in like weird sexism So I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of that idiom, because just because someone else is happy that you love does not mean that you are happy. You know, it's okay to not be okay. Just but no, I think that's rooted in not so cool stuff a little bit. I hate it when people in my parents' generation say it around me, and about stuff that, like, just really basic stuff that their significant others are asking them about. Like, oh, can you do this for me, please? It's like, I'll do it because happy wife, happy life. It's like, no, you should do those things because it's nice. It's respectful and it's nice to do for your partner. Like, you know, find happiness together. That's what I say. Don't just make someone happy so that they're off your back. Find a way to be happy together. It's much better. I've heard you love Ryger Lorenz. Oh, Joel Henderson asked this question, so I'm not answering it. Moving on. Why should Seamus Casey be drafted in the top 3 with Nemec and Wright? That might be a bit of a hot take for me, but it's not far off. I mean, you're drafting Seamus Casey and betting on his skill and creativity more than anything. But he's a work in project. He's a great blank slate to work with. I think he could be much more of an offensive player than he is. Like, he could be a lot more confident and daring than he is, but he also needs to work on his skating. Like, his forward skating and his quickness on his crossovers to separate and find agility in open space is a little bit lackluster. That's the thing that holds him back, I think, from being truly top-tier player in this draft. But give him a couple of years in college, let him stew over there for a while, and yeah, I think he'll be fine. How many points do you see Crosby ending up with? Is 1,700 fair? Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't really have the brain power to think about what Sidney Crosby ends up with in his career, unfortunately. I want to think Shane Wright reminds me of Vinny Lecavalier in terms of NHL translation early on. What's one aspect of his game that sets him apart in the NHL? He's very good for a player that is not super quick. Like, his skill level and his ability to bait in pressure and draw around it, pull pucks around and find creative passing lanes and all these things. Not many other guys in this year's draft does it like he does, as often as he does. And I think, like, again, when I think about translation, I think about what it is about the NHL that sets it apart, right? Like, it's the best league in the world, and I don't think any other league is particularly close. So what is it that sets it apart? For me, a lot of it is the speed of the game. Forecheckers give you very, very little time to do anything. It's the speed of the game and just how calculated everything is. They do not miss. A good team does not miss on their passes very often. You know, they do not. They play it relatively safe. They play the dump and chase style, for sure, but they do not. You have to go out and execute. Good teams execute. They're tape to tape. And with Shane Wright, the one way to counter the first thing of the forecheckers and the speed of the game, one way to do that is play at the same pace. If you're quick and you're skilled at the same time and you can think on the fly and move real quick, then that's a benefit. That's translatable. If you aren't, it's not the end of the world, but you have to supplement that with a bit more creativity and a little bit more adaptive thinking. This guy's coming to get me. How much time do I have to think? Where are my open routes? Do I have any open men? Where is my skill move going to go? Where am I going to put the puck? And how am I going to get it to someone else? Because I don't have the speed to beat this guy. I think a lot of it has to do with those kinds of things. So Shane Wright is more of the latter, and I think that that's what he's going to bring to the NHL that's kind of there already. Just this ability to adapt and move around the puck and find lanes and find guys around the ice and just sort of play it simple, and then he also has a wicked shot at the end of it. So that'll also help. Like, you put him on an NHL power play in a face-off circle, he'll probably score some goals for you. How much would you drop Amirov in a 2020 redraft thanks to his lack of development over the last 12 months with Salavat? I wouldn't drop him at all. I think that he was fantastic at the World Junior last year. He was better in UFA last year than he was the year before, and he's been battling injuries all year this year. So I'm not bumping him down at all. Who do you prefer of Jiricek, Nemec, and Casey? Right now, Casey, but Jiricek is breathing right down his neck, I think. Is Lambert on the Stutzle trajectory or better than that? Well, no. I mean, they're different players. That, you know, they're just different types of players, both at the same age, and I think at the end of the day, they're going to be very different players. So I don't know who's going to be better. It's just they're different players. Sam McGilligan, fellow member of the McKean's video team. I feel compelled to have to ask you the tough questions that others will not. Questions such as, oh jeez, who would win in an all-out WWE cluster F word? 3-lane Hudsons armed with a bicycle to throw a bicycle, or Geeky and Slavkovsky each with shaken up pop cans that they can open and spray into their foes' faces. Wow. I mean, I'm taking the little guy with a bike because he's got a bike. You can fight through soda. You can't fight through a bike. What a stupid question. That guy must be an idiot. Is Danila Yurov nasty? Is that the question? He's okay. I mean, he's one that I struggle to get a read on. Like we just talked about Rodion Amirov. I liked Rodion Amirov in his draft year a lot more than I liked Danila Yurov from what I've seen at the same level. In comparable workloads, like I've liked him a lot more. Any thoughts on Nolan Flamand? Is there enough there to be a late round pick given skating and size concerns? I could see it. Late round swing. He's on my watch list now. I've seen some tape of him. I don't think there's a huge amount of likelihood he works out, which is why he's only on the watch list, but I like him and he's driving good results, better than some, and that, you know, I dig him. Probably wouldn't draft him, but I have him on the watch list to keep an eye on him if he goes undrafted and see where he goes. But I could imagine he gets drafted at like maybe at the end of the draft. Oh geez. Ken Holland has been fired. You have been named the general manager. How would you fix the Oilers given their meteoric losing streak in the last 15 games? Priority number 1 is goaltending. I mean, I think if you look at that team, I mean, they're a team where I feel like if they just didn't make the moves they have made, they would be better than they are. I mean, priority number 1 is actively managing my relationship with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and making sure that they do not want to leave. You're entering the first year of a gigantic extension for Darnell Nurse, who is not a player I think is worth $9.25 million. Like, it's yikes. And they have to re-sign Puljujarvi and Yamamoto this summer. Warren Fogle is on a $2.75 million contract. I mean, I try to offload Zach Kassian, see if anyone will pay me way too much for him. I would see, I mean, Derek Ryan is 35 years old and they've got him signed next year for over $1 million. Like you can't have that. Your goaltending is a mess. And long-term, your goaltending is a bit of a mess. You've got Broberg coming. I don't know, like what could you get for Broberg? Because you can't, if he's not great right away in the NHL, you can't wait. You can't wait around. He's a top 10 pick. It's been a few years. Connor McDavid is going to be 25. You can't wait for 3 years for a guy like Philip Broberg to become a top four defenseman because Connor McDavid might not be a 160-point guy. He'll be a 120-point guy, which, you know, that's a drop, but it's not that big of a deal. But you also have an older Leon Draisaitl who will be over 30. Anyway, it's like, I don't know what you do. Brian Nugent Hopkins has not been very good, but he has a no movement clause. Zach Hyman, how will that contract hold up? Like the Oilers, they've made their bed. I don't know what to do. You can shave off $3.2 million in Zach Kassian, maybe, and someone will pay too much. You let Kyle Turris walk, but like you have to have guys that can play. They have to draft better. Like overhauling the scouting department is probably also a priority. Like I cannot imagine this team if Cole Caulfield is playing on the wing with Leon Draisaitl or Connor McDavid. I can't even begin to imagine the Edmonton Oilers right now if those guys were all on the same team. And that was a punt. That's an easy call. I don't mind Philip Broberg. I'm not saying he's a bad hockey player, but say what you will about Cole Caulfield. That power play at 50% or whatever would probably be even better if you had Connor McDavid on the ice with a guy like Cole Caulfield. So anyway, but I don't know what you do. You've got Cody Ceci for 3 more years. Like, they've made a bed that is not very good for sleeping in. It's got the best pillows that you could ever lay your head on in Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. You could not buy better pillows, especially Draisaitl on that cap hit. But the rest of the bed is a bit of a disaster. You know, like the sheets aren't dirty, but the thread count's pretty low. You know, like it's not a disaster of epic proportions, but I don't know what you do. And I know that's not really the answer you want, but like, who's going to take Tyson Barrie off your hands? Who's going to take Derek Ryan off your hands? Why would you pay $2.2 million for Mike Smith? You know, like it's maybe part of it is that it's hard to convince guys to come play in Edmonton. Maybe. But if that's the case, then you gotta draft, develop, draft. Like, I don't know. I don't know. It's really rough, and it's really unfortunate because guys like Connor McDavid should be guys that are winning Stanley Cups, but they're just not. And I don't know what else he's supposed to do. Is there a player not ranked in the top 3 where if they pan out, they end up being the best player in the draft? Gleb Trikazov, honestly, one of the most electrifying offensive players. He just hasn't put it all together yet, but luckily he's almost a 2023 eligible. He needs to get to scoring areas more to shoot. He needs to play defense at all more often. But in general, I love the guy. Hello, Will. How are you doing? I'm doing okay, Ray. How's it going? Thoughts on Liam Armsby? Seems like a bottom 6 player you need, maybe middle 6. I don't like Liam Armsby's game at all. We talked about it earlier. You're drafting for guys that you can't really get in the NHL a whole lot of. Like, if Liam Armsby hits his ceiling, can you get him for $1 million in free agency if you want him? Then why would you draft him? Right? Like, I would rather take a chance on a higher ceiling guy and just keep plugging away at those dudes who are fast and skilled. With Armsby, I just haven't seen it. I don't know. Again, he's one of those guys where I watch him and I'm going, I don't really know what his sort of contributions are, especially on the puck. Like, off the puck, sure, he might be a good grinder. He can grind along the boards and all that stuff, but I just have not seen much that really takes me away with Liam Armsby. Detroit loves using their first, second round pick on raw defensemen with size like Tuomisto, Wallinder, and Bouillon. Who is that guy this year? It feels like Pickering is a fit, but I can't see him being there. Yeah, probably not Pickering. I mean, guys like Kaliodelius aren't big, but I could see Detroit taking him. Kevin Korchinski, maybe. Salamonson. They might just go for Salamonson and say, we've got a bunch of picks, and if our Swedish guy, like their Swedish team would definitely know what's going on with him and would know whether or not it's worth taking a chance on him. So maybe those guys. I don't know. Not sure if there has been a question about Adam Shakura, but I loved what I saw at the World Juniors and wanted to get your thoughts. I really like him. I've moved him off my watch list into the list. I think he's really underrated. He's almost a 2023 eligible. Tons of offensive threat for a guy that plays in a pro league. This is only one game, and I'll do more down the road. But really good transition data as well. He moves his feet a lot, but he doesn't go anywhere very quickly. Like, he needs to get quicker and more efficient with his skating for sure. But he has great skill. He works hard. You know, he gets into scoring areas like this. If this isn't sustainable, like 20 dangerous shot attempts per 60 on his own, that's not sustainable. But he generated a lot of them himself. You know, wrapping pucks around below the goal line, following up on his own shot attempts, finding space in the offensive zone and making himself a target. He's a really interesting player. Like, I would be very interested to see him if he gets import drafted pretty high and comes over. But I like Sakura quite a bit. I remember Jake Tortora at Leafs camp. Yes, me too. And people wanted to sign him. Then he went to college and did nothing. Well, he went to college and then left almost immediately and went to Barrie. He just never improved. I don't know. And he hasn't played since he played in Barrie, so maybe he just lost it. Like, he just lost his feel for the game, like, just didn't want to do it anymore, which is cool. Like, if that's, if that's what you want, then that's okay. I don't know. I thought there was a lot of talent with him. I thought there was a lot of a fun factor with him that was worth taking a look at. He had really good results. But I guess his path was just not what was expected. And I wonder that if he didn't have that college commitment at the time when he was at that development camp and doing all those things, like, I wonder if instead they knew he was going to Barrie, if they would have just signed him and seen what happens. But who knows? Is Ryan Chesley an underrated prospect in the first round? I think so. I mean, I don't think he's got a huge sort of ceiling, but I think he should be scoring more than he is. But that's really it. I think he should be scoring more than he is, but he isn't. He's almost like a better version of Tristan Luneau to me. A bit of a reserved, sort of defensive leaning guy but he has these moments where he steps up and plays with confidence and moves the puck really well and just finds these creative things to do that I like. So I think he's like a good sort of late first round, see what happens type defenseman. But I don't know if again, like, you're using a first round pick, like maybe more likely early mid second. But I do sort of like the sort of tools that he has. But it kind of perplexes me how he's not putting up more points based on how he plays. Hey, Will. Hello, Liam. Good name, by the way. What do you think about Cole Hopkins? Do you think he has any potential to be an NHLer? I've always liked Cole Hopkins. I mean, he's big and he's got some skill and, he's physical and he can, he plays with more pace than I thought he would. He's a solid player. I feel like he could be a bottom six NHLer. I think he has enough skill and sort of mobility to his game where, he was pretty efficient at both ends. I think there could be something there, but maybe nothing like enormous. I think it's a time will tell kind of thing. Like, give him a few more years. There's no rush, but Hopkins, I mean, as a bottom six NHL player one day, I could see it. Booster made sore armpit for 48 hours. Well worth it. That's very true. The analytics I've seen on Alexander Koskimaki from Pick 224 seem pretty solid. And I liked how he looked in his 2 junior games. Is there a high-level ceiling there? I don't know. I haven't seen much out of Koskimaki, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I've watched him a few times. I've watched Casper Lindell a few times, and both of them, they're scoring a lot of points, but they haven't really moved the needle for me, honestly. Need some Chase Stillman slander in here. Oh, God, I'm not going to do that. I didn't see him play last year. Haven't seen him play this year. Whenever I have seen him play or seen tape of him, I don't know. Not a guy that I didn't have him ranked. I don't know. Who's the smallest guy this year? I mean, small as in small for small's sake, or like literally just the smallest? Because like the smallest guy I have seen this year, I think, is Vadim Fadikov. But the smallest guy with small problems, I think, I mean, for their position, Lane Hudson, I think, takes the cake. Antonin Vero is a small player who takes up very little space. The guy I did today, Eric Galiev, has that issue as well, but Lane Hudson, I would say, is small, capital S. I debate who Ottawa should pick, but then come to realize they'll select a projected second round or top 5. Yeah, probably. Around what pick do you think the talent drops off and teams start drafting more bottom 6, bottom pair players? I don't know. I mean, okay, so I'm pretty confident with Wright, Lambert, Goolie, Casey, Slavkovsky, and Jiricek, I think, will be NHL players. Savoy, I think, will be an NHL player, but I wonder how much his offense translates. Nazer, I think, will be an NHL player. But how much of an impact these guys are going to have is still a huge question mark to me. I feel like Joakim Kamel could struggle to score in the NHL the way he plays now. I think the excitement level for me in this draft drops off around 25, 26-ish. Like, after tier 4, I'd say things drop off real quick. Like, in the second round, there's a lot of guys where I'm going, meh. And then later on, there's a lot of guys where I'm going, okay, like there are signs of something there, but there's a lot of work to do. I'd say like the first round of guys up to Devin Kaplan here are guys where I'm looking at them and going, oh, there's something interesting here. Down the line from there, a lot more question marks. Does Brad Lambert project better as a center or right wing? I think a center. Give him open ice to play with. That's his job. He's only been playing center, I think, every time I've seen him play. Except for the odd face-off here and there. Have you seen any of the Latvians playing in Sweden in Lokmelis and Vilmanis? I've seen Lokmelis. I like him. Vilmanis, I don't think I've seen. I think those guys are for next year, if I'm not mistaken. Lokmelis, I kind of dug. If I'm thinking of the right person. But I can't give you that much detail because I don't really know. It's kind of wild how every first overall pick since McDavid and Matthews has kind of been and the recent first overall isn't even in the NHL. What do you think could be the reason for a drought like this? The NHL's better. Since 2015 even, I think the NHL has just gotten better and better and better and better and better. I think also those two guys are the once in a decade level guys, well, not once in a decade, but like you get spurts of like special talents, right? Like if you think about before McDavid, Aaron Ekblad, like he's turned out to be a pretty good player, but right away in his career, he was kind of fine. Nathan McKinnon, he started his career for a few years. He was fine, and then he exploded. Before that, 2012, Nail Yakupov. That whole draft, except for Morgan Rielly, and even Morgan Rielly took a few years, and he's a good player now. 2011, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. He's fine. 2010, Taylor Hall. That was Taylor Hall, right? Anyway, Taylor Hall. Yeah, he turned out to be a good player, and it took a couple of years, but he got there, I think. I could be wrong. I think it's more that McDavid Matthews were sort of outliers. And when I look at guys like, Jack Hughes, I think came close, I would say. I mean, there were some areas of his game that were questionable at the time. But I mean, I just think that more often than not, it's just extremely rare that guys like McDavid and Matthews come along that are that good. It's just not very often. And, you have Bedard next year and Bemichkov that year too. But I think it's more that those guys are the outliers from the norm, especially in the era now that we're in where the NHL has just been really, really good. The level of play, in my view, has gotten much, much better since the 2012-13 lockout over time, because teams that were playing that old school, truculent, slow, physical style were just getting pounded constantly and mercilessly by teams that were taking the sort of data-focused skill approach and offensive approach more often than not. And now there's sort of this, everyone plays that way, but it's a little bit more physical and it's more intense based rather than speed and skill, but it's still the same sort of style of play, just two sides of the same coin. So yeah, I think those guys are just a bit of an outlier more than anything. How well do you think Matejchuk's game will translate to the NHL? Seeing people have him in the top 10 and even as the best defenseman. Yeah, see, that's the thing. Who are NHL defensemen that play like Denton Matejchuk, right? They are a little bit passive defensively. They rely on positioning in the neutral zone to cut off errant passes. They're not super mobile. They're not super quick laterally. But in the offensive zone, they're basically a forward. They'll press up into the offensive zone. They'll cut through the inside lane. They'll go behind the net to try to make a play. They'll push up the boards to cut off play. Like, I don't think there are that many NHL defensemen that play that way and find a tremendous amount of success. But I think he could do it. I think he's in my first round, like late first, but I don't know. I look at him, I see an interesting passer as well, but I see a player who has some defensive flaws, really relies on his offense to make up for those flaws. And I'm just trying to think of an NHL player that plays like him, and I can't think of any. Like, he's not as skilled or as dynamic or as exciting as Cale Makar. And even then, like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I just think that if he's like picked in the top 15, there are other guys that I would put more money in. Like, I like Kali Odelius a lot more than Denton Matejchuk. Ty Nelson, I know he has some concerns, but I think he projects a little bit easier than a guy like Matejchuk. Like, and you can't even sit back and say, well, Matejchuk can be a power play quarterback, because I don't really I think his best tools are when he's jumping into the offensive zone, not quarterbacking play from the blue line. But who knows? I don't know. I could be very, very wrong. It's a matter of perspective, I think, in a lot of ways, but I have concerns. What makes JJ better than Jack Quinn? I think his intensity level is higher, his skill level is higher, his transition play was better when I tracked both of them separately. Quinn is a great finisher. He's a fantastic finisher. He's got a great shot. He can make a play. He can make a play out of nothing. Paterka, I just think he plays more the style of play that I am looking for in a hockey player, personally. Oh, I need water. Nope. Thought my flashlight on my phone just turned on anyway. Whatever. Is Wright getting miscast, as in he's worse on offense than people thought he was or is? I see him more like a Bergeron-Taves-like player, defense rather than offense. It's weird. I don't think he doesn't do much defensively. He kind of is more ready for breakouts. He's a support player more than anything. I don't know who he is in the NHL. I mean, you mentioned Jonathan Taves, and I think offensively he kind of reminds me of the similar brand. I think his offensive game is good, but I think his value is as a puck transporter. Like moving pucks up the ice, being the last man into the offensive zone or last forward in, and putting the puck in the net. Like himself, like shooting it. I haven't seen him really go whole hog scoring goals like he did when he was, I think, 2 seasons ago. Like he's on pace for over an OHL season. He's on pace for 35 goals, which is not at all an improvement really over his other full OHL season, which is troubling, but it's not a fault of his shot. Like he's got a heck of a shot. I think it's just a matter of he doesn't get the chance to use it as much because his pace is pretty low. So I think there is legitimate concern with Shane Wright in terms of his impact in the NHL. But I think that with some time, he'll get there. Like with time, patience, development, and sort of skating improvements, he'll get there. But yeah, he's a weird one. Did you see Fantille's lacrosse goal? Absolutely, I did. What's your opinion on advanced stats? Do you know who you're watching right now? I'm a fan of them. How useful is a stat like Corsi and Fenwick? I use them all the time. I mean, they're, to me, it's like Corsi is like, again, a lot of this is like analyzing stocks. How useful is a stat like Corsi is like asking how useful is it looking at the price to earnings ratio of a stock. In some cases, yes, it'll indicate something that's undervalued or something that's overvalued. But a lot of the time, there's a lot more research that needs to be done to figure out if that's actually something that's undervalued or overvalued. It's a good catch-all, it's a good starting point, but there's way more that needs to go into it. If that was the catch-all, then I would just track shot attempts, or I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing, because you can get that stuff anyway. I'm more interested in the procedural stuff that leads into those shot attempts, and I think that's the flaw, is that those shot attempts are the result of other things. Right? Like other things need to get done that lead to a shot attempt. But shot attempt differentials just ignore all of them and just say, well, stuff happens and then teams shoot the puck. Stuff just happens. Guys are on the ice. X happens and the puck is shot at the net. Right? Like to me, that's not very helpful, especially for analysis. So it's a good starting point. And I'm a fan of analytics because it tells you literally the things that are happening in front of your face. And those things are useful for a baseline starting point analysis, but you got to go way deeper than that, in my opinion. Thoughts on Cutter Gauthier? Love the guy. One of the more fun, skilled, creative offensive guys in the draft. I love him. He could be higher on my list by the end of the year. He's at 21 right now. You could convince me to put him ahead of Ugrin, Nelson, Howard, Miroshnichenko probably, maybe Mashar, maybe Kulik. Like, he's solidly in this range. Is he, though? Is he really? Yes, he is. So he's at the tail end of this tier. 12 to 21. What could be the issue with Byfield's game? Well, considering he's barely played, I don't know. I actually was gonna go watch his tape in the NHL. Actually, I'll do that after this game, or after this stream, and then maybe I'll tell you if I feel like it. But I mean, to me, the main flaw in Byfield's game is that his skating is kind of rickety and weird, and puts him in a position a lot of the time that he kind of overhandles the puck and doesn't really have the peripheral vision to like work with line mates super well. He's just kind of a bull in a china shop, but I feel like if you can rein him in and get him more balanced, I think you're going to have a heck of a player. And he's barely 19 years old, which is also a benefit. Well, not barely, but he's turning 20 in August. Like, he's a kid. He's a child still. Thoughts on Leon Buchell? Physical, big dude. I need to see more of him. I haven't watched him in a while. I thought at the World Juniors he was a mixed bag. I mean, he's physical, but he'll also let guys just walk right by him. Inconsistent, I would say. Not a great puck mover. He's okay, but not great. His skill is okay, but not great. He kind of reminds me of a less offensively involved Owen Power, kind of. He kind of skates like him. His defensive flaws are kind of similar. And the offensive game is sort of there right now, but not at all on the same level as Owen Power at all. Like, not at all at the same level. Can you compare your 2022 draft tiers to the 2021 draft tiers? Sure. So pull up these rankings. So, I mean, I think Lambert and Wright go in tier 1 from last year. I'd say most of tier 2, except maybe Ratu, Gunther. Yeah, Ratu and Gunther. I'd say all of those guys probably go... I mean, they're all in the same group too, but I'd say most of those guys go probably before Savoy. Maybe before Juracek. Like Johnson, Power, Edvinson, Clark, and McTavish, I would say, all go ahead of those guys. Svechkov, Stankhoven, Sillinger, Robertson, Racine, Coronado. I like those guys a little bit more than guys like Nemish, Kemel, Yurov. Maybe not Yurov, but I don't know. It's tough. I like these players a lot. Svechkov, Stankhoven, Sillinger, Robertson, Racine, Coronado. Maybe they more belong in the same tier 3. I mean, I don't really have the time to go through all these guys individually and tell you where I'd put them. But they're all roughly on the same level. You know, like I think Beniers and Eklund and Wallstead go ahead of Wright in my book. Then Lambert, maybe. Liesel and Hughes, we can talk about, I don't know, but it all gets kind of mashed together. Do you know anything about Theo Linstein? I've heard a lot about him, but I haven't seen a ton of him. Imagine if guys could play college after major junior. Yeah, well, unfortunately, they can't. Well, they get to go to Canadian universities for free if they want. Would under 20 Liga compare to Junior A then? I like it more than Junior A, but only just. I just really don't like Canadian Junior A. How does the J20 National fare up against the OHL or QMJHL? It's not as good. I mean, I think the good teams in that league are kind of on par with CHL teams. Like if you take, I don't know, Jurgenden's team, or at least if you take Jurgenden's and put them up against like the Owen Sound Attack, I feel like they would have a good game together. But the best teams there's haves and have-nots at that level there as well. So I don't know. It's a hard question to answer because it also depends. It depends on the team, really. Who plays in the NHL from the 2022 draft next year? Probably Shane Wright and maybe guys like Slavkovsky, Jiricek. I could see Nazar, but well, no, probably not because he's going to college. I'd say Wright, Slavkovsky, Jiricek. Those guys, maybe if you want a wild card, maybe a Marco Casper finds his way into a coach's heart and plays like fourth line minutes, maybe. Were you surprised with Richie on waivers? Absolutely not. He's been bad, and they're spending a lot of money on him. No. Watching Notre Dame this weekend, who are your favorites on their team? Any undrafted guys to watch? Ooh. Let's pull up the roster. And I think he mentioned, I think I saw as well, Penn State was a team. Penn State. So with Notre Dame, I mean, Spencer Stastny, I really like. But you wanted undrafted guys. I mean, Landon Slaggert as well, but he's drafted. Undrafted guys on this team. Trying to think of them. There was one guy that I liked. I think, was it Ryan Hellewell? Or Nick, it might have been Nick Lieberman. Anyway, to answer your question, I don't think there's many undrafted guys on this team that I've really, really liked. That are ringing a bell, at least, when I'm looking through them. So we'll say no. None. Penn State University. I mean, they've got Donny Arjaniev, which is hilarious. He's tiny and fun. How's he been doing this year anyway? That's not him. They've got a guy named Xander Lampa. That's fun. Ryan Kierwin is fun. He's a pretty talented player. Oh, Danny's been doing well. For a 5'4" guy to be scoring at this rate in the NCAA, that's not so bad. Good for him. But yeah, Kierwin is a guy I would keep an eye out for undrafted guys, for sure. And Danny Zhaniev, he's fun. Will Smith or Oliver Moore? I've seen a lot of Will Smith and I like him a lot. Oliver Moore I haven't seen enough of, or at least I haven't been paying attention. Sometimes I don't. Thoughts on Carter Savoy? How's he even been doing this year? I haven't seen much of him, unless it's like in passing when I've been watching Jack Hughes with Denver. I was never a fan of Carter Savoy. Tracking him and Matt Benning was what made me despise Canadian junior hockey or junior A hockey for so long. I have doubts about how his game projects, but maybe it's improved. I don't know. But I don't know. He was a guy that I had really very little interest in drafting. But he can really shoot. The guy can rip a hockey puck in half. So, and that makes sense considering he has 12 goals in 16 games this year. Serious power play threat in the NHL, I bet, if he makes it. But I don't know. With him, I felt that he's one of these guys that's like the epitome of needs other guys to help him out a little. But maybe things have changed. I haven't seen a ton of him over the last 2 seasons. What did you think of Zach Dean's game? I heard that he had some bad puck luck in his draft year and had more offensive upside than credited for. I mean, I don't think people were really poo-pooing his offensive upside. He didn't score a ton, at least at first. He is kind of streaky, but creative offensive players are sometimes. I liked Zach Dean, but I didn't like him as much as others. I liked the sort of skill and speed, but I felt that under pressure situations in the NHL, he would have trouble. Like, he had trouble escaping pressure in the QMJHL. If you gave him open space, he was lights out. He's just, he builds up some speed. He goes and goes and goes and goes and attacks the net. Like, he does a lot of the things you want, but if you can close him out, he wasn't really escaping that very well. And I don't know. It was a matter of sort of being a little small and being easy to knock off pucks and sort of not really following up. Maybe that's something that you can work on. He's had a great year so far this year. He's fun. He's skilled. I enjoyed watching him for sure. And I thought where he got drafted was perfectly reasonable. Like, it's perfectly acceptable. But the problem with being, like, the problem with this work is when you have to make a pick, Like, I liked Zach Dean, but I liked Logan Stankoven way more, and Stankoven was available. You know, I like Zach Dean, but I liked Atu Ratu more. I like Zach Dean, but I liked Simon Robertson more. And you want to talk about someone who has bad puck luck or has more upside than being credited for. Simone Robertson in the SHL this year. Goodness gracious. But anyway, yeah. Hope that answers that. Hey, Will, when did the scouting reports start coming out? Yes, probably March. I need 7 games, which is 7 months of games for players before doing that. I usually do a game a month if I can't help it. So usually around March. And this weekend, I will be shooting a little test video, probably 5 minutes long, of just some blurb thing that I wanted to put together because I want to hire an editor. I finished writing up the requirements for the job. It's not like glamorous or anything, but just to, you know, put effects and titles and do all the grunt work for video editing that I do not want to do. So I'll be shooting a test video this weekend as I would shoot it with the desk and the backdrop and the lights and everything. And whoever is interested, I'll make a posting and you can email applications and I'll send out the test video and you can do whatever you want to it. And best one and person who kind of I jive with the most will be able to edit my videos because that's the end goal. Mostly so I have more time to make more data. Artyom Duda, obviously points aren't the only indicator of a prospect's projection, but he's pointing up historical numbers in the NHL. Is he legit? I don't believe it. It's a lot of it is on the power play. I like Grudinin way more. He's kind of like a guy, he's like the Tristan Luneau of the MHL to me. Just fine, adequate MHL defender, and that sets him apart because most MHL defenders are not that. At least from the perspective of someone watching North American hockey all the time. How has Amirov looked in the games that he has played? I have not seen any. How did you get started as a scout? Well, I've always had an interest in the draft. Like, I was a draft geek years ago. Like, when I was a kid, I used to read NHL yearbooks. Like, every kid, like, wants to be a hockey player. I always wanted to work in hockey. Like, I grew up, obviously, want to play in the NHL, but I was fascinated by the draft and building teams and guys getting traded and, like jersey numbers fascinated me, for example. So it's always kind of percolated there. I got started. Well, I started the Twitter page when I was 26 or something, and it was mostly just to keep up with the hockey and follow the draft. And I quickly found the sort of the scouting world there. I discovered the sort of scouting world very quickly there. Some of the people who I followed originally that I really enjoyed following and sort of aspired to be like are probably here. Like, Joel Henderson was one of the first ones. Cam Robinson was one of the first ones. Who were the other ones? I'm trying to think. Ryan Beach was another one at the time, who's now with Vancouver. There's a whole bunch of them where I'm sitting there going, this is something that's really interesting, especially, and I noticed that there was a bit of a gap when it comes to data analysis in the draft. So when there's data analysis, I thought, okay, well, there's a gap here, right? There's not much going on in terms of looking at the data behind the draft and historical production rates and all that stuff. So I started peeking around, and after a couple of years, I mean, things really changed gears for me because I had a lot of, personal things in my life. I got to a certain age, things happened in my family that really sort of tweaked my brain a little bit to get thinking about me and what I want to do with my time and my life and the goals I want to set for myself and how I perceive of myself and what I'm doing here on the planet, right? And I thought, you know what, screw it. Like, let's like, I set the goal for myself of like, let's see if by the time I die, I can win a Stanley Cup. Let's see. I mean, not me personally, like, on my own, but be part of an organization and part of the work that goes into achieving that goal. And it's like, lots of people have won the Stanley Cup before. Lots of people work for NHL teams that have won the Stanley Cup. Why can't I be one of those people? So, it's been years of hard work, and obviously I'm nowhere close. And if I just do this for the rest of my life, then I'm cool. That's cool. I love watching hockey. I love the sport. I love the future of the sport. Probably comes from my love of like science fiction and all that stuff. But yeah, that kind of outlines it. It's a it's a long road, but it's just sort of slowly been building over the years and started pretty quiet, to be perfectly honest. Ronnie Hirvonen, what is his potential? Middle six guy, I'd say. Middle six center or winger, Swiss Army knife. He can chip in defensively. He can chip in offensively. He's perfectly adequate all over the place in your middle six, I'd think. What's the issue with the Oilers? Outside of their best players, they're bad, and their goaltending sucks. Is it just me, or is the 2022 draft a bit overrated? I think it was overrated by those who were hyping it up last year. I think it's an okay class. I think it's about on par with last year. I'm not as optimistic about so many guys. It's definitely not 2020. It definitely kind of gives me vibes similar to last year, but my guys where I'm like excited and would be really excited to draft them kind of ends after the second round for me. Like once you get down to Alexis Gendron, Ilya Kvochko, Thomas Hamara, Bo Jelsma, Matthew Poitras, it's like these are all just guys, right? Like these are just kind of guys to me. I like Kenta Isa guy. I like Topi Roni as a low upside, high floor kind of guy. Matthew Ward is a ton of fun. Adam Shakura is fun. But the rest of it, I don't know. But this is also why I don't get caught up when people ask about how next year's draft or 2 years from now compares to this year or whatever. It's like, I don't know, man. Like lots and lots of things can happen between now and then. And I also do not have encyclopedic knowledge of every draft class all the time, everywhere. Let alone the ones that have already happened and are in the NHL. I just don't. I don't have the time or the brain capacity to do all that. Rossi looks invisible in his first game. Well, okay, that's just like your opinion, man. Any interest in doing a Team Scouch alumni franchise in Chell? That's a good idea. I did not know you could do that because I'm old, but I'll see if I can do that. That would be really interesting. Who's the top goalie in this coming draft? I don't know. Tyler Brennan, I guess, but I don't think there are very many. Jack Hughes pieces it all. Once Jack Hughes pieces it all together and fills out, he'll be a game breaker. I mean, he seems to be figuring it out now, right? Like he's had like 10 goals and 10 points in his last 5 games, right? Something like that. He's coming along. And that's kind of why I would like to always bet on guys that are speedy and skilled and transport the puck. Because that's the thing you need them to do in order to produce offense, right? Like you can work on your shot, you can work on your passing, I guess, but if you can move the puck, that unlocks a lot of tools, or unlocks a lot of potential. How do you think Goolie and Schneider compare once they play in the NHL? I think Schneider will be a better puck transporter, like a better offensive transition guy. Goolie he'll be also a like a good defensive player as well. Like he's a mobile, physical player as well, but I think he has more oomph with the puck on his stick. Goolie, I think, is just going to be a shutdown dude. Like he's an animal. Like he goes out there and erases guys, and plays really strong defensive hockey. I do not see him as much of a puck transporter in the NHL. I think he'll be a very good defensive one though. And Schneider will be a good defensive player who can transport the puck. I think that it's, they'll be physical players, but their brand of play is slightly different. What is USDP on Elite Prospects for the US guys? That's just the US national team. So that's the national team development program. And it just includes all the other games they play. So the USDP plays, I don't know, 50 games a year, maybe 60. And some of them are in the USHL, but others are against NCAA teams, NAHL teams sometimes, Division III teams they play sometimes, just exhibition games against whoever wants to play them. And I believe, I'm almost certain of this, that the Elite Prospects data for the USHL is also included in the USDP data, so it's duplicated. But the USDP includes USHL, all those NCAA games, both Division 1, Division 3, other USHL exhibition games or NAHL games or something. Last 3 drafts, a goalie has gone in the first round. Will that trend continue, or is this a weak goalie class? I don't see it happening. I don't think any goaltenders are going in the first round. I'd be surprised. Like, if Tyler Brennan goes first round, I wouldn't do it. But maybe. Would you trade Kravtsov in a first for JT Miller, 50% retained with his UFA next season? I mean, if the Rangers think they need to be better, then maybe. Because I don't think Kravtsov is going to really amount to a tremendous NHL player. I don't think, unless he has a tremendous supporting cast with him. A first-round pick, like, yeah, I mean, I think JT Miller has been good enough with Vancouver that a first-round pick should be the asking price. So, yeah, I think I would do that deal. You said you watched Denver. How's Shai Buyam? Fine. He's fine. I've only seen him a little bit, but he's been fine. And I always kind of felt that way about him. I always kind of felt that he was fine. Not bad, but not moving the needle a whole lot. At least not often enough. So, yeah, like, he's fine, but I thought it was kind of a reach. Do you have any dramatic rises and fallers from the 2021 draft? That includes undrafted players who have seen a big rise in their stock, like Tucker Robinson. Tucker Robinson's not part of, he's not top, he's, Tucker Robinson's not part of that group, I don't think. Dramatic rises and fallers from 2021. I don't know off the top of my head, and my head kind of hurts. I mean, it's also very, very early to make those kinds of claims. I mean, obviously, Cole Cylinder has been looking very good, but I wouldn't say like a dramatic riser. I mean, there are lots of guys that were just drafted way too high, right? Like Nolan Allen, like I don't know what is going on there. I think Alexei Hemasalmi is performing well so far. I think Daniil Chayka, I've seen a few games of Guelph where he's looked a lot more dynamic and mobile and offensive. I love that Giannis Moser played NHL hockey already. I thought he would, but I didn't think he would, it would be literally this season, but here we are. Yeah, I don't know. Like, if even at the tail end of the draft, I don't know, like, Nobody has like completely blown themselves out of the water to just rocket up the draft charts. At least not to my eye. Yeah. I don't know. It's still very early. Thoughts on Jordan Dumay? We kind of went over him off the top. What do you think happened with VT Miettinen since last year? I don't know. I haven't seen any of him at all this year, to be honest. I don't know. Mike Johnson said the Leafs should acquire Ben Sherratt. He suggested Sherratt and for a Amirov and a fourth. Who says no? Kyle Dubas does not make that trade. There's no way Kyle Dubas makes that trade. Toronto says no. And as if Toronto needs to have fewer picks. Like, no. Thanks for all the hard work you do. Thank you. I try. Sorry if you already covered this. Are you a Jeff Gorton fan? Do you think he has the Habs heading in the right direction? Yeah, I think Jeff Gorton's smart. I think he's a perfectly capable guy to do the job. I get judging by what's happened with the Rangers since he's left, I think that his influence was much more in the direction the Habs need to go, rather than the direction the Habs have been going, which is kind of what the Rangers are kind of doing these days. So I'm optimistic about him. Seems like there's a solid drop off after the top 4. Yeah, a little bit, I'd say. I mean, I'd say there's a bit of a drop off at like 20, but I don't know, like this is really, like these groups are really close. Like I don't know what I really think about Kamel or Yurov, even Nemish. Like, I don't know, part of me wants to put these 3 guys in a tier with these guys, but that could mean that a guy like Cutter Gauthier could go 8th, but I also don't know how different those 2 guys are. I don't know. It's a weird year. And it's also still January. Still got 5 more months to figure out what I think, or 6 more months. But yeah. Must he top 10 next year? I have no comment on that. It's interesting to think about the perspective that teams only have 6 top 6 spots. A lot of these guys will have to adapt the role to make it. personally, I never ever think of NHL teams thinking that you have the top 6. Like, I think that what people say, I don't know. I think what people say are bottom 6 players are just players that play a way that is not as impactful on the game as their top 6, but it's safe. Whereas to me, I think there are lots of players in history that have played bottom 6, quote unquote, bottom 6 minutes as skill guys, put up great results, and teams can't wait to get rid of them. And they bounce around and bounce around and bounce around, performing pretty well. It's just not what they expect, and it's not good enough to be in their top 6, so they just jettison them because they don't play the way that they think a bottom 6 should play. Like, to me, you load up your forwards with guys who can score, with guys who can skate, with guys who can play the game and drive results and move the needle, if you can find them. You shouldn't be looking at certain roles in your team and going, well, if we get the puck back, we just hand it back to the opponents, but we're really good at getting the puck back. We're really good at it. It's like, well, okay, like you're just basically treading water until the better players can hit the ice. And like the extreme example seems to be the Edmonton Oilers this year, from what I can tell. Are college free agents overhyped? Yes, I think so. Roy could be a rise over 2021. I do not believe that at all. I've been watching Jonathan Waugh. Why can't I remember his name? Wow. But I've been watching him for 2 years, and I still am not a fan. Score all you want. I'm still not a fan. I feel like Morrow could have gone much higher in Koivunen. Well, I think you're a Canes fan, if I'm not mistaken there, sir. So, yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think both of those players could have gone way before. Oh, and Giannis Moser has a primary assist. Good for him. Interesting. 3 points in his first 5 NHL games. Good for him. Did you answer my question earlier? Yes, I did, Sam. It was a dumb question, but I answered it. Lane Hudson with the chairs, or with the bikes, because he's got a bike, and the other guys have cans of pop. What are you thinking? Thoughts on Jim Rutherford? His ability to improve upon margins in Pittsburgh was impressive, but Vancouver is so asset-deprived with minimal cap space, it's going to be tough. I have faith. I mean, I have faith in Jim Rutherford. I mean, I think that he's one of these guys that sometimes does things that you go, what are you doing? And he makes a lot of people look silly in retrospect. Maybe that's luck, but I think he has his head on straight. I think he knows what he's doing. I think the fact that he's taking sort of the Lou Lamoriello role that he had with Toronto, like I think he's taking that role with Vancouver and saying like, look, I've been in this industry for a really long time. I've seen the old, I've seen the new. Like Sam Ventura worked in Pittsburgh, right? So he's not against all of these new sort of concepts, and I hope that he leans into them a little bit more with Vancouver. I think that with Vancouver, though, the plan will be take it all down, acquire the assets and picks that you can, and you gotta nail your drafts. You've gotta nail them. Like these next 3 or 4 years, you gotta nail them. Get a lot of picks and nail them. And I think Jim Rutherford knows that, and I think he has his head on straight with how to get there. And we'll see. He's got a lot of people to hire left over, and we'll see what happens. I don't know. But I'm more optimistic than pessimistic, I think. I think bottom 6 is PK Energy guys, score 15-20. Yeah, but I mean, some of the best penalty killers that I've ever seen are skilled offensive players too. Like, they're energetic, but they're skilled offensive players even in junior that just maybe don't have the finesse to score in the NHL, but they top out in that sort of third or fourth line role. That's kind of exactly the type of player that I'm looking at. How much of a drop-off is the East Coast from the American League? Quite a bit, I think. Are there any players that you've watched that didn't play as well as you thought they would have based on their stats? Absolutely, it happens all the time. And the opposite happens all the time as well. Thoughts on Ryan Tverberg? Strikes me as a potential late-round steal. Well, I mean, I wasn't super enthralled with his draft year play. He works hard and he can play. He works hard and he can shoot. I think that he could carve out a role as a bottom line energy guy. I don't know about steal, but bottom line energy guy, bottom 6 energetic guy who can shoot. Sure, I could see it. Which would be great for a 7th round pick. That I guess is technically a steal if you have a 7th round pick that plays NHL games even in that role. Feels like a weird year for Swedish prospects at the top. Thoughts on a few top guys: Odelius, Ushl, Ugren, and Lekaramaki. Love Odelius. He is at 12 on my list, 13. Love him to bits. Noah Ushl, one of the highest upside players in the draft, but one of the most risky, I think. Ugren, I think, is the opposite of Ushl. Like, you kind of know what you're getting out of him. Like, I think he could be a good up and down winger. You know, skate up the ice, transition the puck up the ice, make a play. Back check hard. He skates fast. Back check, get the puck back. You know, he's decently skilled as well, but he's pretty meat and potatoes with his energy kind of game. And I think he's doing good. And Lekaramaki I need to circle back on, so ask me again down the road. I was thinking that one Hudson fights Geeky, one fights Slavkovsky, and the other snipes one of them with the bite. But can he throw it accurately if he's blinded? Jeez, the amount of drugs that must be coursing through your veins right now. I don't know. I just think a bunch of Lane Hudsons with a bike could probably overtake two slightly bigger, well, quite a bit bigger people with cans of pop. You can also, you can do this. If you have things in your eye, Sam, you can do this. You just rub your eyes. Oh, and I'm going to pick up my bike and hit you with it. So there's your answer. Sorry, I know it's late. That's okay. I am winding down. I know it's late, but where would Luke Hughes go in this draft? Probably number 2? 3? 2 or 3? Maybe even 1? I don't know. Ish. Do you see Cole Perfetti as a first line center? No, I think maybe more of a second line center or winger. Swiss Army knife guy. You can play on the wing, you can play down the middle, sure. But I don't know if he's like as dynamic or game impacting as like a first line center, personally. But I think a second line guy, absolutely, I could see that. Who are some player comparables for for Frank Nazar? Frank Nazar the third. I don't know. Zach Hyman kind of vibe. He's kind of got that kind of going for him. Give me the rundown on Isaiah George. Interesting player. Really, really skilled, but doesn't really use it much. Like, I feel like he's not flexing the muscles he's got. The game I did of him was pretty quiet. But I think that, yeah, like, he was pretty inactive almost all over the ice, but when the puck was on his stick, there was just something about him where I'm going, yeah, like, if you were a little more assertive, this could be very interesting. Like, you could be a lot more interesting. He's a good defensive player, though. Like, he's a good defensive player, but I wonder where he goes with. He's a weird one. I don't know. Nice blank slate player. He's on my watch list, but I don't think I'll have him much higher. He's curious, but I'm not sure of his potential. I don't know. I keep saying that he's weird, but he is. I like him, but yeah. In the same draft, who would you take higher, Holtz or Kamel? Probably Holtz. Thoughts on Craig Button? He's fine. He's a really nice dude. I've never interacted with him directly, but I probably should just reach out to him and say hi. But yeah, he's a perfectly nice dude. Everything I've heard about him is very positive. He's fine. Do the Bob McKenzie draft ranking ever change yours a little? No, because I mean, what it does for me is illustrate. Okay, it illustrates kind of who is probably going to be drafted and where. But it doesn't change my mind. No, because I don't know. I'd rather say what I think. After all these years, I'd rather say what I think and risk being wrong than let other people sort of infiltrate. And I can't tell you how many times I've let my discussions with other people affect my viewpoints and perspectives, and I wish I didn't. It happens a lot, for me at least. And sometimes I'm wrong too, right? Like, I'm not saying I'm better than those people or I'm wrong or I'm right all the time. But when I listen to other people a lot of the time when I let it sort of affect me and I sort of go, okay, yeah, but I trust what this person has to say, usually I wish I didn't do it. Who do you see as a faller like Fabien Lysell last year, where they shouldn't be valuable in the late teens or 20s but find themselves there? Shouldn't be available, I'm assuming you mean. This year, Brad Lambert, I could see being a guy that's available later, especially if his scoring doesn't catch up to where it should. That's probably the best example I can think of. I mean, I have Kaliodelius ranked really high, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's available day 2. Any good right-hand defenseman for the Canucks to draft? Yeah, Seamus Casey. That's one. My Sabres, besides not having a lot of top-end talent, are very soft. Anyone from the bottom of the top of the first, top of the second to help with that. They're soft. Leon Buchell, if you want that. Buchell. You could get, I don't know, Nathan Gaucher, perhaps. You could get... there aren't that many. Not a lot of young players play that way and find a lot of success that would get them into the NHL. It does not happen very often. I'm trying to think of who I've seen, like, just lay a guy out. Buchell would probably be a good example. You're not going to get Jiricek in that range. Yeah. We'll just say Buchell and move on. Where do you have Nemec? Just kind of got here late. I've got him at 9. Do you think there could be do you think a second team in the NHL could be in Toronto? Yeah, absolutely. There's no reason why 2 NHL teams couldn't exist in the GTA. I live in the GTA. I live right kind of near a GO station. They could leverage that. They could like, I don't know, there's lots of empty space around these parts right along the goal line, and it's a vein between Niagara Falls now, Hamilton, Toronto. Like, it could be the team that kind of unites the Golden Horseshoe a little bit, and I think it could exist. I'm surprised it doesn't. Like, New York has 2 teams. One is outside of the city, and the other isn't. And I think it could work. I'd certainly love it. That's okay, so stick to your guns. Nobody's right. Maybe other people's rankings give you new perspective, but trust your methods. That's exactly how I think about it. It's good for perspective. I go back and check on all the guys where there's a big delta between myself and everyone else. But I don't let it get to me, and I don't let it affect sort of how I do things. It gives me food for thought. Like, again, my whole thing with all of this work I do, I don't want to replace entire scouting staffs. Like, I don't want that. I don't think that's good. I want scouting staffs to be a little bit different than what they are. But I also want it to be data focused, but I also want just people to bounce ideas off of and compare tape and watch tape with other people, be able to analyze it together and go through it and check each other's work constantly. That's my vision of a scouting team, rather than what's typical. But yeah, when I see those big differences, I just look into those players again and go, okay, well, do I really stand by what I believe? And am I seeing what people are seeing? And a lot of the times I do see what other people are saying are the benefits, but I still look at the overall impact of that on the player's game and the player's game on the game. And a lot of the times it still doesn't quite line up for me. Ivan Morozov might be on the move if Vegas needs deadline help. Worth a shot. Yeah, he's worth a shot, for sure. The Blue Jackets have 2 top 10 picks this year. Who do they target to make this draft a success? Oof. Well, they've got Kent Johnson and Cole Sillinger. Huh. Brad Lambert would be a fun one in Columbus. If they can get Lambert and Goolie, like, I think you're laughing. That would be fun. We'll say that and move on because I got to finish this up. Who's better, Suzdalev or Wagner? Yeah, so I've got them both in the same tier, I think. I like Suzdalev. Do I have Wagner? Where is Wagner? There he is. Oh, I have Wagner ahead. I think with Wagner, there's more pace, just more inconsistency, which kind of sucks. Suzdalev has really good hands, puts up really good numbers. I just wonder how his game translates. Like, the game I tracked of him was against it was the one game in the Allsvenskan where he played minutes, and he was fine. He wasn't really moving the needle a whole lot. He had a few chances, almost scored a goal, but nothing that really like blew me away. Whereas Fabian Wagner, I think, has more pace to his game. There's skill, there's creativity, but I'm not sure he I don't know. It's inconsistent with him, which is kind of unfortunate. Which player are you a lot higher on than others? I don't know. Gleb Trikazov, Seamus Casey. There's a few. Who else? Kaliodelius, Yuri Kulik. I've got Cutter Gauthier higher than most, but not too much. Where would you see the second team's arena? Downsview Park. No. I mean, my thinking is you look at Mississauga, Oakville, Burlington, Hamilton. Like right there, that's 700K plus West Toronto is on the goal line right down to Union Station. You've got 700 and something thousand in Mississauga, a few 100,000 more in Oakville, another 100 and something thousand in Burlington, and like another 300,000 or something in Hamilton. That's, you might end up with a market of like 2 million people, which is pretty small, but you're going to sell out those games. If you put it on a goal line, right? Like around Burlington Go, if you're familiar with the GTA and the public transit, like if you could put an arena around the Burlington Go station or Bronte station or Appleby, I think, has a station, like something in that range, then maybe you could make that work. But yeah. Who do you think will be looked back on as a steal? I can see Casey not going high. Yeah, Casey would be one. Brad Lambert, depending on where he goes. I think Gleb Trikazov could be a huge steal. Like if he goes in the second round or something, I don't think he will at this point because a lot of people have been catching on to him. But I think Gleb, if you can get like Brad Lambert and Gleb Trikazov as your first and second picks in the draft, then hang on. Here we go. When is the under 18 tournament? I believe those are usually in May? Question mark? I think your style of analytics would go great with a guy who may simply use the eye test. Good mix of perspectives and adds both insightful opinions and ideas. Yeah, I mean, I guess. I mean, if I'm building out a scouting team myself, my imagination is that there are no such thing as regional scouts. I've got guys that I send around the world to make connections with players, their families, their coaches, their teammates, whatever. I send those guys out just for that purpose, right? Hey, I've got a scout coming in. He wants to meet one of your players. We like what we see. Blah, 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 blah. You go and meet him, go see him, and you file a report and whatever. Maybe you see them play a game, but the focus should be on the social side and the personality side. I think the vast majority of the work in a scouting department gets done by a pretty lean staff of people who just watch hockey all day from around the world, multiple games, maybe even multiple times, weekly meetings of like, okay, here's where our lists are individually, and let's go to bat for these players. Let's figure out blah, 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 blah. Like that to me is my image of how scouting should be done. Like I don't think anybody should strictly be limited to the eye test. I don't think people should strictly be limited just to tracking data. But I don't think it's good to have multiple different people in multiple different regions that don't interact or have that crossover mentality. And I also don't think it's good to just go straight by the seat of your pants and go stats only. So yeah. What do you think you'll making player profile video? Oh, like March. The videos will start coming in March. Just got to find an editor first. Yeah, that looks like it's about it for tonight, folks. Thank you very much for joining me. This was very enjoyable. Busy night tonight. We hit about 50 people, which was kind of fun. That's the first of the year. Not a bad way to start the season. But I'm gonna call it a night. My arm hurts and my throat hurts and my head hurts, so that's also a good sign of calling it. If you can, get your boosters. Omicron is crazy, and my friends who have it say it is not very much fun. Thank you very much for listening. We will see you next week, for sure. Yeah, so I think that'll be it. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much. I say that all the time, and I've been saying it over and over again, but I really do appreciate the attention. Stay tuned. We'll be back next week, and we'll see you then. All right. Thank you very much, everybody.